shaken the rap world, which has once again lost a star to violence.
Mase did not show up to the party the night Big got murdered.
Because of this situation with LA and people feel Death Row and Tupac and whatever, that's why people believe Biggie got killed, right?
Wait until you hear who Mase just named as truly responsible for Biggie's murder.
Because it was a setup, right? It was a hit.
After 27 years of silence, the former Bad Boy rapper finally spoke out on national TV, accusing people everyone believed were friends. The same people who showed up at reunions, acting like nothing happened. People who knew exactly what went down in Los Angeles that night.
It was about probably like 70 or so bloods in the hallway. I couldn't even leave my room.
How'd you get out?
What Mase revealed shattered the official narrative and exposed betrayal so deep. Even his own circle was stunned. He said it out loud.
To me, I feel Biggie died because he came to LA.
The bombshell came during an appearance on Cameron Sports Talk Show. They were discussing the 2016 Bad Boy reunion tour when Mase suddenly paused and dropped something no one saw coming.
Biggie's dead because Pac lied. You know what I'm saying? If he doesn't lie, we don't have an East Coast, West Coast beef. We don't have, like, he's dead because he lied.
At the final show in Los Angeles, Puff brought Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg on stage. While the rest of Bad Boy joined the so-called unity moment, Mase refused to come out. He stayed backstage, staring at men he believes were tied to Biggie's death.
So, it was a hit put on him.
What made it explosive wasn't a hint or vague suspicion. Mase directly accused Snoop and Death Row of being involved in his friend's murder.
When you heard Biggie died, did you stay in your hotel room? Did you leave out? Did you want to go back to New York?
I actually was trapped in a hotel.
According to Mase, the reunion was nothing more than a stage performance to fake peace. But he was there the night Biggie died. He rode in the convoy. He watched his friend take his last breath. Standing beside Death Row artists was unthinkable. He couldn't understand how Puff could celebrate with them while Biggie's murder remains unsolved.
Biggie was like letting me hear his raps and go get girls for him and stuff like that. Not go get them, but, me and C's would just pick up girls and drive them back to the crib.
The moment happened during the 2016 LA finale. When Dre and Snoop walked out, the crowd saw history. Backstage, Mase was furious. Performing in the city where Biggie was killed already felt wrong. The second he heard they were coming out, he told his team he was done. Others tried to change his mind, but he refused. For Mase, it wasn't about old beef. It was about loyalty.
And I learned so much about rap like that. And then one day he was performing at the Apollo and he brought me out. And that was the part that just changed everything.
But Mase didn't just refuse to perform with Snoop and Dre. He also laid out specific reasons why he believes they were involved in Biggie's murder.
The night that Biggie Small died, where were you and what did you do in the aftermath right after Biggie Small died?
Where was I? I was in a hotel.
During the interview, Mase brought up Gene Deal, Puff's former bodyguard, who was in the convoy the night Biggie was shot. According to Mase, Gene told him that Snoop was actively looking for Biggie in the hours before the shooting, asking where Bad Boy was staying, which parties they were attending, and when they were leaving. Gene said he saw Snoop at multiple locations that night, constantly asking about Biggie's movements, and that the timing was far too suspicious to be a coincidence.
So I'm not going to say he died because of Pac's lie. I'm going to say he died because he came to LA.
Mase also pointed to something even more damaging. A phone call that allegedly took place between Bad Boy Security and Reggie Wright Jr., the head of Death Row Security, just hours before Biggie was killed. According to multiple sources who investigated the case, someone from Bad Boy's team contacted Reggie, Wright asking for extra security, help in LA, and Reggie allegedly said he would send people to watch the situation. But instead of sending protection, the theory is that Reggie used that call to learn exactly where Biggie would be and then pass that information to the shooters. The setup was reportedly so precise that the car carrying the gunman was already parked near the Peterson Automotive Museum before Biggie's convoy even arrived. Multiple witnesses, including people riding in Puff's car, said Impala SS wasn't following them. It was waiting. The car had been sitting at that corner all night with a clear view of the intersection where Biggie's SUV would have to stop at a red light. When the convoy approached, the Impala was perfectly positioned to pull up beside him and carry out the hit.
Said that Biggie set him up. You know Biggie didn't set you up. You know he didn't set you up. You know that he didn't know you was coming to the studio. You know that. Why would you say that?
And the evidence suggesting this was a death row organized hit becomes even stronger when you look at who was handling security on both sides that night. Gene Deal has spoken at length about how strange the security situation was during that trip to LA normally, when Bad Boy traveled. Especially a hostile territory like Los Angeles, they used their own security and did not depend on local help. But during Soul Train Awards weekend in March 1997, there were people around claiming to be security that Gene didn't recognize. People who somehow seemed to know details about Bad Boy's schedule that should have remained private. Even more suspicious was the behavior of the LAPD officers who were supposed to be protecting them. Gene has said the cops being paid to escort the Bad Boy convoy mysteriously vanished right before the shooting. The off-duty officers who had been with him earlier in the night were suddenly gone when the cars left the Peterson Museum party, leaving Biggie's SUV completely exposed. Gene believes those cops were either part of the setup or were deliberately pulled away so the shooters could strike without interference. This wasn't some random fan who just walked up and decided to shoot Biggie Smalls. That's how some people try to frame it, but it looked like a setup. Then there's the fact that two LAPD officers, David Mack and Rafael Perez, were deeply tied to Death Row Records despite department rules banning off-duty work for record labels. Multiple Death Row employees have said they saw both Mack and Perez at the studio, at parties, and around Suge Knight, like they were part of the team, not police officers. Mack in particular was close to Suge, and he had been introduced to Death Row by a female officer who brought him to video shoots where he began building connections with rappers for off-duty security work. Mob James, one of Suge's top enforcers, described how corrupt LAPD officers working with Death Row would literally shield them from other police. If Death Row got into trouble somewhere and regular officers arrived, the cops on Suge's payroll would step in and make sure nobody from Death Row got arrested. It was basically a private police force operating inside the LAPD. And that kind of protection would have been critical for planning and carrying out a hit on someone as high profile as Biggie without getting caught.
Why would it be 70 Bloods in your hallway after Biggie Smalls died?
Actually, after Big got killed, they was probably looking for more Bad Boy artists.
But the person Mase specifically called out as directly involved wasn't Suge or the corrupt cops. It was Snoop Dogg, and the accusation is based on what happened in the hours before the murder. According to the timeline pieced together from witness statements, Snoop was at several locations in LA on March 8th and 9th, 1997, the weekend Biggie was killed. Witnesses placed him at the Soul Train Awards and at several after parties, asking questions about Bad Boy's whereabouts. Gene Deal has said Snoop seemed fixated on finding out where Biggie was staying and where he would be that night. Questions that may have seemed harmless then, but looked very different in hindsight. Maze's point during the interview was simple. If Snoop was truly cool with Biggie, like he later claimed, why was he tracking him down that night? Why was he so focused on Biggie's movements? And if he knew something was about to happen, why didn't he warn anyone from Bad Boy that danger was coming? The fact that Snoop was seen at multiple locations asking about Biggie just hours before the shooting, then vanished right before it happened, raised serious red flags that Maze believes were never properly investigated.
Regardless of what Pac was doing, regardless of, oh, they set me up and the hit 'em up song and all that shit, if he would have stepped on that plane, would he still be alive?
What makes this even more suspicious is that Snoop has given conflicting versions over the years about his relationship with Biggie. Sometimes he says they were friends who spent time together. Other times he admits there was tension because of the East Coast-West Coast feud. During the It Is What It Is interview, Maze called out that contradiction, saying Snoop can't have it both ways. Either they were friends and Snoop should have protected him, or they were enemies and Snoop's presence in LA that weekend was part of the setup. Maze also questioned how Puff seemed so comfortable working with Death Row artists after Biggie died. Over the years, Puff has collaborated with Snoop, appeared at events with Dr. Dre, and acted as if the old beef had simply faded away. To Maze, that feels like a betrayal of Biggie's memory, especially when a murder remains officially unsolved and nobody has ever been charged. How can you say you love your artist, your friend, and your brother, and then turn around and do business with the people tied to killing him? And Mase wasn't the only person close to Biggie who refused to play along with that fake reconciliation, because Gene Deal has been saying the same thing for years. Gene has repeatedly said in interviews that he knows exactly what happened the night Biggie was killed, that it was a planned hit coordinated by death row security and corrupt LAPD officers, and that the shooter was someone hired specifically for the job. Gene has named Wardell Poochie Faust as the actual triggerman, a known mob Pyru gang member who worked for Suge Knight and had a reputation as a cold-blooded killer willing to do anything for money. According to the theory Gene and other investigators support, Reggie Wright Jr. coordinated the entire operation. After getting a call from Bad Boy Security asking for help, Reggie allegedly contacted Poochie and gave him the details about where Biggie would be, what time he'd be leaving the museum, and what route the convoy would take. Poochie then positioned himself at the corner in the Impala SS, waited for Biggie's SUV to stop at the red light, and carried out the hit exactly as planned. The evidence supporting this theory also includes testimony from Teresa Swan, Suge Knight's ex-wife, who told investigators she was present when Suge handed Poochie $13,000 in cash shortly after Biggie's murder. She claimed Suge said the money was payment for taking care of business, and that Poochie had done exactly what he was hired to do. Suge has denied that account, pointing to the sky during a recorded conversation, and refusing to say anything except that only 3 people knew what really happened to him: Teresa and the person who's dead, meaning Poochie, who was killed in 2003. Gene has also said the LAPD deliberately sabotaged the investigation to protect the officers involved. Detective Russell Poole, who was originally assigned the case, believed from the beginning that death row and corrupt cops were responsible, but he was removed after getting too close to David Mack and Rafael Perez. The department claimed Poole was chasing the wrong theory and that there was no evidence connecting LAPD officers to murder, but Poole maintained until his death that the cover-up reached the very top.
What else can you be solidified by other than the greatest rapper ever to bring you out on stage and say you're the next one? And once he said I was the next one, I never looked back.
So after 27 years of silence, why did Mase finally decide to reveal what he believes about Biggie's murder, and what does it mean for the people he's accusing? Part of the answer seems to be that Mase is done playing the industry game. He found religion, stepped away from secular music more than once, and reached a point where he no longer cares about protecting industry ties or keeping fake peace for business. When he saw Puff bringing death row artists on stage like everything was fine, something inside him broke, and he realized he couldn't keep pretending. Loyalty to Biggie's memory meant more than any reunion tour or photo op. The other factor is simple. Mase was there. He rode in that convoy. He saw the aftermath of the shooting. He watched Biggie die in the street while they waited for an ambulance that took too long to arrive. That's not something you forget, and it's not something you forgive. Watching people act like it's all ancient history while the killers walk free is unbearable. By speaking now, Mase is making one thing clear: not everyone from Bad Boy is willing to pretend that reconciliation matters more than justice.
I think we had to go to Vegas or something like that to get back.
There you have it. That's where Mase was at, and that's what happened in the aftermath of Biggie Small's death.
The accusations against Snoop, Reggie Wright Jr., and corrupt LAPD officers are not new. Investigators and journalists have been making similar claims for years. But hearing them from Mase, someone who was actually inside Bad Boy's inner circle and has nothing to gain from lying, gives the theory new weight. Mase isn't some conspiracy figure trying to sell books or chase attention. He's a man who lost his friend and has carried that pain for 27 years while watching the people he believes were responsible get treated like legends. Whether Mase's accusations will lead to any real action is still unclear. The official investigation into Biggie's murder has been closed for years, with the LAPD saying they did everything possible but could not gather enough evidence to prosecute anyone. The task force that reviewed the case identified Poochie as the shooter, but could not charge him because he was already dead. And they claimed they still did not have enough proof to charge Suge or anyone else who may have ordered the hit.